Can women preach, teach, pastor in a Christian church? That is the question we want to trash this moment. Please sit down, and in a short while, let's discuss this. Let's look at the scriptures. What is the Bible saying about this? Are men and women equal? Those are the two things I want to trash in a very short time now. But let me lay the scriptural foundation first. I'm reading 1 Timothy chapter 2 from verse 11. Let a woman learn in silence. This is Paul speaking, instructing Timothy. Let a woman learn in silence with all submission. And I do not permit a woman to teach. Now underline the personal pronoun. I do not. Now that's Paul talking. That I is talking about himself. That I, Paul, do not permit a woman to teach or to have authority over a man, but to be in silence. Now let's look at the last part of it. He said, however, or nevertheless, that's in verse 15, she will be saved in childbearing if they continue in faith, love, and holiness with self-control. Now this is the passage some, conservative churches have used to put women down, to mean that women cannot speak in the church. They should sit in silence. They interpreted it this way, that they should sit in silence in the church. They shouldn't teach. They shouldn't climb the altar. They shouldn't be pastors. They just sit down and listen. They should be at the receiving end. And their job is to, give birth to children. Because that is seemingly what this passage is saying. It says if they continue in childbearing, they will be saved. They will be saved in childbearing. And so they are relegated to the background. Their work, their job, and their place is in the kitchen, from the kitchen to the bedroom, where they will become baby factory. Is it not funny? When they become baby factory. Because it is by giving birth to children they'll be saved. So some women within some of these churches who have interpreted the scriptures they have been made to believe that in essence they are not relevant to the ministry of the church, to the work of God in general, except to sit silent and listen. And if they have any question, they should go home and ask their husband. Now, when people read the scriptures and you don't look at the antecedent, that's what happened that led to this instruction. You will just read it. If you read the scriptures and start running with it, that's where you make error. That's where a pastor or a teacher makes blunders. To interpret the scriptures correctly, you have to look at the historical background. What led to that scripture? What led to that statement? Read the previous verses and other things that happened before that instruction was given. And be able to understand where the speaker is coming from. Look at the historical background, cultural background of this person that's talking. And then you'll be able to analyze that scripture. That's how to interpret scripture. So a lot of scriptures have been mishandled. Based on this instruction, which has also been repeated in other parts by Paul the Apostle himself, some teachers and some churches are holding on to this, to put women down. And they say they can't teach, they can't preach, they can't be pastors. Their work is to sit in silence in the church. Their ministry is in the kitchen and in the bedroom, because by giving birth, they'll be saved. So they turn, in other words, they have become baby factory. But is that really what the scripture is saying? That cannot be what the scriptures say. Now, if you look at the scriptures critically, you will see that the person speaking here is Paul. And he made it clear. He said, I. He used the personal pronoun, I. He said, Timothy, I am saying this. In many of Paul's instructions in the Bible, many of them, he always will say, this is what I'm saying. It's not a direct instruction from the Lord, but since you trust me as your leader and someone that has experienced the Lord, you should be able to trust me and abide by this instruction I'm giving. Don't forget, many instructions in scriptures like this were given as a result of what was happening at that time. At that time, whenever there were a lot of problems in the early Christian church. If you turn to the story of the Corinthian church, it's a church that they had spiritual gift, but they were behaving like children. Even Paul had many times to, chide them, to correct them, that you seem to have spiritual gift, but you are carnal. You are behaving immaturely. Paul had to talk. It was a church that had so many problems to deal with. Is it the one that somebody was sleeping with his father's wife? There were a lot of problems in the Corinthian church. So, issue of struggling for positions and like that must have risen up in the early Christian church. And Paul is this hardliner. You know his background. If you see a teacher, you look at his background, you know where he's coming from. He's coming from a very strict religious background. And he's a hardliner. He's somebody that will talk very strict and straight. And sometimes even without looking at the two sides of the coin. So this instruction was given to be able to curtail the excesses of some people in the Christian church at that time who happened to be females. He said, with what I'm hearing, and as a leader, that sometimes you come, you give certain instruction. It is not a doctrine. It's to be able to put things in check and to beat everybody to line, to order. It's a regiment. Regiment is not supposed to be something that will be for all time. It's not all time rule. It's a measure put in place to be able to bring you to a life of discipline. That's what they call regiment. Certain instructions are given to be able to settle the matter on ground. But after the matter is settled, we move on. So this should be one of those kind of instructions. If you look at the culture this Paul is coming from, you understand what motivated him to say this. Now, the Jewish culture do not really place too much premium on women. In terms of they do not place women in a very good pedestal. Let me put it that way. They highly exalt the men. The Jewish culture highly exalt and elogize the male factor. But the female persons seem to be put down as second class citizens. Now, when you look at their census, for instance, go through the Bible. You mention the name of any family, the genealogy, that is the members of that family. Women will not be mentioned. That's the ancient Jewish culture in the Mosaic era.